All right, so fun video today. We're going to be comparing the Boker Tech Tools to the Rake pocket knives. Let's go ahead and get right into it. All right, so first of all, I chose specifically for this two models with nearly identical tool sets. But as you can probably tell, the size of these two tools is substantially different. And that's reflected very well in the weight of the tool. So the Boker Tech Tool is give or take about 5 ounces. 5 ounces. And this one, get that out of the way, just over 7 ounces. So there's a substantial difference in dimension, and you can really see that with these two tools. The question I had, and I think a lot of people had, is are there advantages of one over the other? And yes, the answer is yes, of course. So we thought we'd go through it. So first of all, let's get this out of the way. They look very similar, right? And that's because they are made by the same OEM. Both are made by Sanrenmu, which is an OEM in China. So that OEM makes both of these tools. The quality is almost identical. The tool sets, for the most part, are nearly identical. However, in practice and in use, they are quite different. So let's first of all go through the Boker. So the Boker is a 4-layer knife, and it has their weird Phillips / cutter option, aka the finger slicer. It has the flathead, bottle opener, scissors, saw, and blade. And the blade is in 12C27. This is kind of important because this is a much better steel than you will find in a Swiss Army knife, one of the big claim to fames. But with the price dropping on these, it's kind of something we can talk about now because they are becoming very comparable to price of a Victorinox. Also, in their same running is the Rake knives, and they are the only ones making the large version, and it has some differences. For one thing, every tool is a little bit bigger. This is a little bit bigger. The flathead has a couple of holes. These are designed for wire bending. It has a much longer saw, a much bigger scissor, and functions completely different. We'll talk about that in a minute. And there is also an inline awl that fits underneath that scissor. So a little bit different setup. Also, on all of the Rake knives, including the medium-sized ones, which are almost identical to the Bokers, they have a pair of very serious tweezers. So these are great. Now, some of them might not be as sharp as I would like, but one couple of seconds on a file and they are as sharp as can be. But they have a great amount of spring to them. They're relatively rigid, which is very good. That's a good baseline. They fit nicely inside the G10 scales. Oh, sorry, I gotta put that stuff away before we mess with it. All right, so let's close everything so I don't hurt myself. Finger guillotine is closed. Okay. All right, so I feel better now. Whew. Terrifying. So many sharp edges. And they're very springy. Okay. All right. Whew. Better. Feel better now. So, the big thing here is size. There's a significant difference in size between these two tools. But is there an advantage? Is it worth the extra weight? Maybe. So let's start with the fact that we have two different types of blades. Now, there is a non-locking variant of these larger tools. They're the L series, not the LD series. This, however, has a locking 12C27 blade with a liner lock. Now, it's not the highest quality liner lock in the world, but it works. It has 2 stops, run right there, and then of course the close. And if you get good, you can actually flick it open. It is not an easy knife to articulate because the spring is relatively strong, but it is very much possible. And I think for a lot of people, having a one-handable blade on this is a big deal. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons where you might want to choose this one over a Boker Tech tool or the medium version of the rake knives. Now, the next thing that's a big difference is the scissor. Now, you wouldn't think that, but believe it or not, these actually perform quite differently. Now, in my testing of them against the Gauntlet, wow, they're surprisingly similar in size. Okay, with my testing against the Gauntlet, I found that the LD series scissor performed far better. It got a 13 out of 20, where the Boker Tech tool got a 9 out of 20. And the other thing that you'll notice is if I hold still and press this, you'll see that both arms are moving. This one will move out and this will move in. See that? Now, if I hold this steady and do the same action, what happens? The only thing that moves is this arm. That is excellent. So far, this is the only scissor using integrated spring with a back spring that I have seen that does not move when you press it. Now, I'm not 100% sure what is going on, but since I disassembled an L series version, we can begin to compare it with the Boker. Let me go get those for a second. Okay, so when I disassembled the large knife, I took it apart and put everything in a little pouch. Very, very interesting video. I will put a link to that down below where you can see how I disassembled it and how it looks inside as I go step by step. But the scissor and the scissor spring have a certain shape to them. And my thoughts is that, as I can see, you see how this is completely rounded? It is my guess that the Boker Tech tool is engaging the spring and that is causing it to shift. So in theory, I can fix this and potentially can keep it from moving so it stays over here like that. Anyway, I think that that would improve it potentially. The other thing is, yeah, this just feel more solid. I'm not sure I quite understand why, but there's definitely a significant difference between those two scissors. That's a big thing. The other big thing is underneath that scissor is an awl, and it is an inline awl. So this is a much easier motion than using it on the back of a multi-tool like this. And you're not putting your fingers in front of the blade potentially, and it's a little bit easier to manipulate, right? Plus it is significantly longer, like way longer. So it's going to dig and create a bigger hole and a deeper hole. That's another big thing that I think is a difference. Now, on the positive side for the Boker is a couple of things. Number one, contoured G10. Much more comfortable, I think, than the scales on the rake. They have these weird, like, graphic looking cutouts that just end up just being, you know, sore in your hand. It's just a stupid idea, and you should immediately file these down if you ever get one. I don't know why they do that, just to make it look cool, and then they ruin the ergonomics. Here, nice and rounded, curved G10, and no, there's no tweezer here, which is a big deal, but they did have the ability to switch the pocket clip from tip up to tip down. Now, when it comes to a two-handed knife, that's less of an issue, but it seems like it would be a good idea if Boker ever reintroduces this to make a one-handed variant, a smaller one-handed variant of their tool with a locking mechanism. I mean, that would be really, really good, and that would put them in a special place when it comes to comparing it to other pocket knives. Right now, this design, which is very similar to the Victorinox Huntsman, is also quite a bit heavier, I think about 1.5 ounces, and a little bit thicker. Each of these layers are quite substantial. That does not mean that there isn't advantages to it. It's very, very comfortable in the hand, and we have a much more robust blade as well than the Victorinox, especially true in the LD series. I mean, this is it's a big boy. It's a big boy blade. So which one would I buy? I think that depends a lot on weight. I think that honestly, the fact that these are two-handed doesn't bother me too much. The spring is a lot softer than it is in the LD series. So if you don't care about the fact that it's non-locking, this is a great option. There's nothing on the blade to kind of keep it from being used on its full length. It's very, very comfortable in the hand. If you're good with slip joints, this is going to be great for you. But I gotta say, personally, I like a knife that replaces my folding option entirely, so I don't have to carry multiple things. And this, even though it is much heavier, if I end up carrying a pocket knife with this, I may as well just go with the larger size. And 12C27 is a pretty decent steel for a budget knife, and it is very, very tough. So I like that. I like that a lot. And one thing I should mention, although it doesn't perfectly fit, the Victorinox Fire Steel slash what do you call this? Fire starting tinder that you can get on their website. It's actually originally made by Tortoise Gear. This does work. Now I did have to modify this ever so slightly so that it fit, because the corkscrew geometry is a little bit different, but once I did, it worked just fine. So now I have a Fire Steel and tinder included as well, and that should work also for the Boker. Well, we'll just go ahead and check that since we are here and we can do it. Let's go ahead and do it. There we go. There you go. So yes, so if you are able to slightly modify the geometry of this piece, you will be able to have your fire starter and tinder on top of it. Now that matters because the model we're looking at right here is the Huntsman, which is well respected as being one of the best Victorinoxes for being in the outdoors, right? It's one of the best out there. So these are both in comparison to that tool. So I don't have one, actually. I lent it out to a friend, but these have already been compared to them, and I don't think they fully capture all the features that are available there. However, I will say that the LD series comes a lot closer to having an advantage over the Victorinox than the Boker does. It still has the tweezer. It has an inline awl, which is a little bit better. It has a big saw. Like, this saw is huge. This is closer to the saw you'll find in the, I think it's the 118 millimeter. I mean, there's a significant difference here, and I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but longer is better when it comes to saws, for sure. So which one should you get? Well, like I said, I think it depends a lot on if you're going to carry this independently and you're okay with a slip joint, because there is a significant difference in weight. And I'm not sure all the other advantages here necessarily make up for that. The big one being the scissor performance. I think that if it's possible to improve the scissor performance here, then this is a no-brainer. But as of right now, for me, I kind of prefer this platform, and you can get the slightly thinner variant that does not have the saw, and that comes out to a give or take around 6 ounces. Both are great choices, and they, as I've shown when we took apart the L series, these are really high quality, like surprisingly high. So value-wise, I think they're pretty good. Anyway, that's it for today. Just a quick video comparison between the Rake LD 40, I think 41B, and the Boker Tech Tool 7. You guys have a really good day. We'll talk again soon.